Hey guys, welcome back to another PS2 Memories video. Here we are taking a look at a racing game by the name of Alfa Romeo Racing Italiano. This is an officially licensed game from Alfa Romeo itself that was developed by Milestone and was released for the PlayStation 2 in 2006. Subsequently, the game did get a prior release on the Microsoft Xbox back in 2005, but was ported to the PS2 a year later. And the game focuses around a lot of cars around the popular Alfa Romeo franchise from within that time period, both the current versions of cars at the time and even some classic cars. The game itself, although it looks promising, did get mixed reviews after the game was launched. It got pretty much mixed to low reviews from a load of game magazines due to some of the features or their lack of within the game as it was released. Most of the issues mainly being around the handling physics of the cars, and even due to some of the other features with regards to some of the upgrade systems that you utilise throughout races and so forth to upgrade your cars and even your characters' profiles, as there is some form of RPG style elements in the game that you need to utilise to get the most out of it in order to proceed through the campaigns and various championships that's on offer. But even regarding those negative reviews, there are some positives to the game itself. Even though the handling physics on some of the cars can be a bit unusual for the most part, and it did state that in magazines that a lot of the car models, a lot of them had very similar handling characteristics which wouldn't have been very reflective of the real life counterparts at the time. And even with the environments, even I found personally from playing the game that when you're driving along, sometimes you feel like you're driving on a skating rink rather than an actual tarmac or a racetrack. So it's just something to be aware of. But even regardless of the downsides of the game does have a lot to offer in terms of features. So you have access to loads of different race modes. You have like a quick race mode, and you can even enter into a career mode, also called a dynasty mode. Although in quick race mode, if you're only starting out with the game, you are very limited to the amount of cars and tracks that you can choose. You do need to play through the campaign in order to unlock everything else. And as you start through the championship, you will start off with a limited number of vehicles and even courses on offer. But the premise of the championship mode is, even though you're doing genuine out and out racing, there are different objectives that you have to complete. Like, you have to win championships, you have to gain a certain number of points from completing different tasks, all while earning like XP points so that you can use to further upgrade your driver's profiles and abilities, from awareness to handling of cars and so forth. You will notice that once you start utilising some of these upgrades, once you start earning them throughout the races, you'll notice various differences in terms of the overall performance of the game. That the game does get slightly a little bit easier the more you actually play it, but once you're utilising the right upgrades. So depending on the upgrades that you use really does have a detrimental effect to how the game really plays out. But in saying that, even with the number of upgrades that are available, there's some of them that really will help the experience along, but there's others that won't really do too much to really help the experience, and they don't really have too much impact on the overall performance or playability of the game. But even with the RPG elements, it is a nice touch, and it is something that's quite different that you don't often see in racing games. So you can earn additional points for completing various different tasks, even throughout races themselves, for overtaking cars, even if you do clean laps where you don't damage the car or take any damage throughout both any of the laps in the race or even throughout the entire race itself. But just note that if you drive recklessly, or if you are struggling to get to grips with the handling of the cars and you're crashing into things, the car will accumulate more damage over time to a point that the car will eventually stop working, and then you'll end up retiring from the race and you have to start the whole process again. Even when you're playing through the races itself, sometimes even the AI can come across as being quite weak, as they can be quite clumsy. They can be crashing into themselves and more often not crash into you, and you'll find that they can nudge you out of the way very easily, but if you try to do the same to them, it's not as easily done. So it definitely doesn't even out the experience in that sense. And even with the versions of the cars that are available, you will start off with like a typical standard version of the cars, but as you go through and you can gain access to different features, you will unlock more cars and even more upgraded versions of the standard cars, even up to a point of like racing versions. So you will gain access to some really cool cars in the game, all from within the very popular Alfa Romeo franchise. And with some of the upgrades and unlockable features in the game, they will greatly help you further into the campaign as the races and the overall game starts to get a little bit more difficult. So a lot of those upgrades and elements will become useful at that time. Even regarding the tracks in the game does offer a lot of well-known tracks, likes of Laguna Seca, Donington, even Nürburgring, among others as well, that you would be very familiar with. Even with a lot of other makeshift tracks as well to enhance the experience. So even with all those features in the game, even though it got low reviews, what does it feel like to play even now? From my own personal experience as of making this video, I had heard about this game before, but I never really played it myself. Now, I'm a big fan of Alfa Romeo. I used to actually own an Alfa Romeo Giulietta. As of recording this video, I had the car up until a couple of months ago, and I absolutely love that car, so I do love the Alfa Romeo brand. But even in terms of playing the game itself, it is tough to get into, I will admit, but it's funny, the more you play it, and especially if you like playing racing games that do utilise RPG elements, which I do, I found that I was starting to enjoy the game a lot more than I actually thought I would have, even to a point that I found myself getting a bit addicted to it, actually playing it, because I found that once you were progressing and you were seeing the results, you felt a sense of reward for each of the efforts that you made throughout the game. You always felt a sense of achievement for achieving success throughout races, because the races can be quite difficult. But after spending time playing it, even though the game does have flaws in terms of the handling, give yourself time to sit down and play with the cars and get a feel for how they handle. As the races go on, eventually you will figure out the best possible ways to get used to the twitchy handling physics of the cars. But not only that, the best way I found was to learn the overall layouts of the tracks, so that way then you'll know when to brake and when to corner effectively. Because even the braking system in the game is, especially with the standard cars, can be a bit sluggish. It can take a long time for the car to really slow down, almost to the point that when you do slow down, you nearly have to put the car into a complete stop to get around the corner at times, especially in some of the more twitchier handling cars. But even aside of that, the more I played it, the more I started to like it, and I have to say I quite enjoyed it. Now, I know this game may not be for everybody, but there's definitely enough unique elements on it, which did state, going back to the reviews, that even regardless of the average reviews that it got, a lot of the reviewers and gamers did really like certain elements of the game, and it is apparent even to be seen even here, even from myself playing it. There are elements of the game that are really, really good, but it's one of those games you just have to sit down with it and just play with it and just really just take it at face value for what it is. It's not the best racing game out there, but it's also not the worst one either. It just depends on your own taste and if it's something that you're really into. But if you do stick with it, there is an enjoyable experience to be had, as long as you can overlook and work within the boundaries of the twitchy controls and so forth. You will have a decent experience, as you will know that you'll have something to work towards with the RPG elements and the upgrade systems. You'll know that you're seeing progress as you go through the game, so that in itself is a reason to keep playing. And I'd love to know your thoughts on this game if you have played it yourself, and if so, what do you think of it? Did you enjoy those features that I mentioned on it, or maybe not so much? I'd love to hear your experiences, so be sure to share it down in the comments below. And if you have enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more videos on these unique style of racing games where I do provide reviews and gameplay videos and where I share my thoughts and experiences with everyone, then be sure to leave a like on the video, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be updated when future videos are released. And also be sure to check these videos here on the screen, where I do provide other similar reviews and gameplay videos of various types of racing games that were also released on the system back in the day. So be sure to check those videos out, and I will see you all over in the next one.